Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about audio hardware, and we're going to do a small unboxing of something that I really wanted to have for a longer time but didn't want to go into because there was digital software. Well, now I ended up trying many different kinds of software and just said these all don't work for me reliably enough, so I'm going hardware actually. So let's introduce something very cool. It's quite large. So what we have here is a huge box, and I actually ordered it just today. So let's just open it up and see what's inside. It is rack mountable, I know that. I just really hope it's not that big. And unlock. Here we go. The DBX 286S. Let's get this puppy out here. So basically this thing is an all-in-one microprocessor. I call it that. It's actually preamp and processor in one. It comes with the mic preamp, so if you need, phantom power, you got that going here. You have a compressor with drive and density, and you can see how much you push it. You have a de-esser where you can actually manually, with hardware, put in the input where you want to have the S's be removed. And you have an enhancer with low phi theta and high phi theta. An expander and gate where you can say, hey, how much of the input do you want to let through and how much you actually want to have increased with that. And lately, of course, if everything's fixed through this process, you have the output gain, and that goes out to wherever you want. And this basically was the idea that I had. I just wanted to have something hardware based, which is also later on rack mountable if I want to go with rack, which I can use instead of, a fact that's on my PC. And I'm going to talk about how my PC will work into this after the unboxing, but it is very crucial that this is really reliable and standalone. And this does not have any, surface, any foots here, any rubber which will help for surface. So I may have to put something under there, or I just use it the way I am using it right now, putting it on top of my DACs. On the back end there's something old school here. We have the power going through here, with the line input, the microphone input, which we definitely will need, and with an insert and out. But yeah, in the end of the day, this is basically already it. Not much to the unboxing experience itself. Just seeing that it's a very nice product, very clean, nothing wrong with that. And now it's up to me to put it actually in place on my desk. So let's get started.
Hey everyone, and so I've set the whole thing up. You can see here in my live sort of hand cam how the whole thing looks like. So as a quick explanation, I have on the bottom left the Euphoria UMC22 by Behringer, which is a simple DAC, so digital to audio converter, which takes in your microphone or your line instrument, like a guitar for example, and makes it into a digital sound that your computer can read and then can record and do anything else with. On the right side, we have from the same family of products the Euphoria UMC 404 HD. This one is a 4x4 lane or DAC. So it's as simple as you have 4 inputs and you have 4 outputs. You have the outputs either as 4 mono slots or as 2 stereo slots, because that's still 4 channel. And that is just what 4 in 4 out means. The reason why I have the latter is actually I'm just a little bit crazy with audio hardware, and I bought this a long time ago because I wanted to have a physical way to output sound from my system in a different lane than what I have currently if I just have a standard PC with a motherboard and that audio card. It's just one output. Now lately, and this explains a little bit why I'm so crazy about audio hardware also, I've been trying things around with stuff, and for like 1.5 years, I've always been playing with a more ludicrous setup. Some people use the Go XLR mini mixer for that. Some people use Voicemeeter Potato like this here. As you can see, this is what I actually have in use right now. I'm going to go quickly over Voicemeeter and why I want to get rid of it. It's a very simple task, actually. So as you can see, we have our 5 inputs here. I have my microphone. This is the USB audio codec. That's the UMC22 on the bottom left. Then we have NVIDIA RTX Voice, which serves as another microphone input. And I mean, if you have never seen it before, you've probably heard about the hype. Let me just open up the window real quick. There it is. So this is RTX Voice. Basically, it uses some of my AI cores in the NVIDIA 2080 Ti that I have. I have actually an RTX 2080 Ti by now. It's another video that's coming soon, so subscribe to not miss that. I have my microphone USB audio codec, which you can see here also, going through RTX Voice, being filtered, and then actually going back into the hardware input here. I can use it in any other program, like for example OBS, which I'm recording with right now, and also on Discord. But I can also, again, put it through NVIDIA RTX Voice, do some effects on it. As you can see here, I have a compressor and a gate on here, and that can actually be sent out on these knobs here through A3. So let me put that RTX Voice away. Output A3. In case you don't know Voicemeeter, all the outputs are collected in the top right here. This is currently my cable A input. There is always, if you pay for Voicemeeter, or if you just pay for the virtual audio cable, which is what I did, you get 2 extra digital audio cables. So what I have is basically 3 audio devices, which are purely digital, which have the great function that you can use the inputs as outputs and vice versa. So usually if you set it up like this, you put your microphone in here and put it out through somewhere. And usually that would be the output. But if you put it through the virtual audio cable, it also serves as an input. So I already have a tricky lane where I go through one DAC into a program. That program actually goes out to a speaker, which is a virtual audio cable, and that virtual audio cable copies the same audio signal and puts it back again as its own microphone input. And that's what I'm currently using in OBS. While I'm speaking, you have, hopefully, if I did everything right in post, you have different audio signals that you can hear me talking through. There's the vanilla output, which sounds like this. Then we have the version that comes from RTX Voice, the version from RTX Voice, which sounds like this. It's basically the same thing. It's just, you know, a little bit filtered with AI. Maybe if you can hear in the background, there's a fan right next to me, you could hear that. We notice, for example, if you do a popping noise like this, it would be filtered from RTX Voice sometimes, not every time. And then this is what I actually sounded right now on stream. When the last step goes again through Voicemeeter Potato, it does have these 2, you know, effects in here, and then it goes out to the virtual audio cable. And I want to get rid of that for a very, very good reason. So what Voicemeeter Potato can do is actually can restart the audio engine. There's a whole audio engine inside of it, and there's one thing that I had a lot of problem with. It used to be that actually programs under Windows 10 and everything had to run through certain, you know, outputs here, and you can mute them on one or the other. So you have at least, for example, let's say you have YouTube open in the Firefox, or you have Spotify open, you want to have that on a separate channel from your video games. And if you want to achieve that, you have to do this here and say, okay, Firefox, for example, is muted here, and Spotify is specifically only in here. And then the game would be in the main channel. This is a very good way, for example, for streamers on Twitch to have audio running through a separate channel and do many, many different things with that. I personally, for example, use it when I switch from a CSGO scene where I have gameplay and I'm just in the warm-up, I let the music run in the background. And when I switch to actual game mode, when the warm-up is over and the round starts, I just switch the scene and turn off an audio device, so it doesn't put the music out on the chat. I could also do it differently. I can also mute, if I want to have the music on chat, I could also use it the other way around. If I want to have the audio running through OBS, I can just go to my mixer, which is right here, which actually uses, for example, as you can see here, microphone, Discord. This is a DJ input, music, and then that would be game. I think I already scratched it off a little bit. And I can have my own, you know, output here, controlled by myself, how loud I want it, and what mix I want with it. Right, so there's a lot of possibilities that I get from this. I know that Go XLR also has the same things possible. and it also have a little bit of routing. The reason why I want to do it myself in this complex way was, at first, at least I thought, well, if I can do it digitally and it doesn't cost me a thing, because you can try Voicemeeter Potato for free, I think even unlimited. It's, I think, donationware, if I understood correctly. It just works. However, if there's a problem with the CPU and with the audio engine, it sadly happens that it crashes. And then it sounds as if you're talking through, you know, a mixer or a fan. It's just choppy. I hope this effect has not happened actually yet in this recording. Be sure I have to always click restart audio engine. If I'm playing a game and this happens in the gameplay, I have to click restart audio engine. And this gets very annoying, especially in a game like CSGO, where you just can't tap out and click somewhere else. So in game, you have to, you know, focus. So this is very annoying, and that's why I will completely get rid of Potato. Sadly. I could maybe use it just for the outputs here with the music, but I figured out I also don't need that function. So the whole thing with the microphone is already not necessary. And the way how I don't need to use this setup anymore for the different programs and outputs, well, I already have the virtual audio cables, which are also standalone. And what I can do now is something that came new with Windows 10 lately, which I didn't know about first. So if I click on sound settings, I get this menu. And if I scroll down a little bit, here's the app volume device preference. And in here, actually, I can give each program that is running a preferred audio output. Now, I didn't know that this one existed. It must be something newer because it didn't exist at least a year ago, I think. And I did have two different programs actually that tried to make this happen. And that was the so-called program Chill Volume, where you could also have a app running. It had an audio output and you put it somewhere else. Or like an app like, you know, Potato. But recently, at least for me, it does actually work. I can say, okay, Mozilla Firefox, whatever runs on here, that audio output goes to, for example, Voicemeeter Value Free Input, which is the third one here. I can say for Spotify, for example, I put it also on the same lane. So everything like a video or music that runs on its own channel. And I have like a game. If I would have, for example, CSGO open right now, I could specifically say, pick something that's actually working. I could specifically say I want to run this through, for example, Voicemeeter input. Right. This is the one that's actually an output. That's the main one. So as you can see here, I have a lot of audio devices. Even if I lose these three here, this is not something big. And my whole plan is to have a whole construction going on where I explain in another video how everything's set up. The quick explanation is this is where this extra, you know, DAC comes in. The one on the right, the Euphoria UMC 404 HD. It has finally gotten new drivers recently. It has finally received new drivers recently, and it has now actually two separate stereo outputs that I can select as an output. For example, I could say, hey, I want to have on this out 1 and 2, the game. I want to have on 3 and 4 a stereo output that is the music. I can choose the audio codec that is the Euphoria UMC 22 here as my Discord output, so I can hear my friends. And I have a hardware side solution where I can hear myself a little bit as a monitor. That's all I need in the end. I could do even a little bit more with the digital cables where I bundle them together, which is something that I probably do still after all, because it makes it a little bit easier to concentrate where everything goes. And especially games like CSGO that actually take control of your microphone. I can have, for example, my real DAC at just 20% volume input, and then I can take actually that, listen through it on the digital audio cable, take that as a full output, which runs at 100% volume, but you know, it doesn't have overdrive on it. It's a little bit specific about audio stuff, but if you have the trouble of sometimes programs taking over your microphone, I think also TeamViewer does that. It's really good if you have an audio input which can just automatically run at 100% all the time, but which doesn't have any background noise or humming, which happens, for example, for me, because of the Euphoria UMC 22. If I have that on 100% recording volume, that will actually start to hum. It doesn't sound great. So I keep that at a lower volume, copy that on the virtual audio cable, and then I'm good. How does it actually all factor in here? Let's clean up a little bit and have a straightforward recording. Basically, I will not do that right now. I know I just said that. But the whole reason why I did this video is just to have, you know, a good reason to see how this microprocessor works, or microphone processor actually. So my microphone actually runs in the back of this DBX, which I already presented to you. Then it has its own audio line going from the front to the end, and then it goes out in the back. What comes out in the back is actually a cable which runs into the UMC22. And as you can see when I speak, there's the green light on the left on both these audio devices. That means the microphone is actually being picked up and it's running through. Currently, if all the knobs are set to 0, which is this setting right now, there's no effect active. So you should hear me very quiet, and I probably boosted myself in post a little bit. This is just to show that there's nothing going on right now. The cool thing is you can just use the top one just as a basic microphone booster. But what we want to have, of course, is better, of course, sound from it. So let's begin setting it up a little bit and then see what each setting does bit by bit. And for that, I want to actually see what I'm doing. So let's actually check the microphone USB audio codec. So as you can see right now in Audacity, this is why I have this running on top of me. This is basically the input that comes right from a microphone into the microphone processor and then into the DAC. There's no digital effect on it whatsoever on my PC. That could fail, that could lead to, you know, processors hanging and everything. This is all based on the hardware that is outside, and then in the last step it gets digitized and put in here. So this is what it sounds like, and I have to boost it in post probably. So let's see what else we can do. We can of course boost the microphone a little bit by having it compress a little bit. So I'm just put up, you know, the drive of the compressor. It doesn't change anything how, of course, the input is impacted. It boosts the gain a little bit. That's a side effect that I read actually in the manual. But what I want to do is actually to have the impact of my microphone going in, you know, being lowered. What a compressor basically does is, if there's a volume coming, you know, an input, if it goes above a certain level, it will put the gain down. Basically, like in a mixer, it just takes the volume meter and puts it down, makes you quieter. The effect of that is very simple. If something comes in that's too loud, it gets quieter, and if it's quiet enough again, when it continues, it gets the volume up again. And that makes the whole thing as a whole basically compressed. So everything has like a standard volume or loudness to it. All right, so right now we should see a change. At least I can hear a change. I think it's very minor, but you can see that there's a little bit more volume going in right now. I have a fan running in the background. You may already be able to hear it. But what we basically see here is already when I am talking, the volume of the microphone is being pushed down. And how much you can see actually when I'm talking. When I'm just standard talking, it actually gets to halfway down. For my personal taste, that is a bit too much. I don't want to be compressed that much right now. So what I did basically is turn everything a little bit quieter. When I'm starting my sentence, for example, like, I don't know, let's say a word that has a lot of p in it, like popcorn. You can see that the first p actually always has like a small peak running in there with the red light. It's very cool to have an actual hardware light for that. And the rest of the word, like popcorn, the rest of it isn't as loud anymore, so the lights go back a little and the volume gets raised again, so the whole word actually sounds the same loudness. Now for the next part, there's the de-esser. This makes the whole video completely sound better right now. So I'm gonna put it to a frequency around 4K. So we can see that it doesn't do anything. I want to have also the threshold happen. So at the frequency of around 4K hertz, we want that, if there is sound, have it to dampen, so it doesn't, you know, push all through. This takes away frequency from that range, and as an effect, causes that my S's aren't as sharp again. You already can see that there's a light going on here. I should, for example, put it like this. And every time when I have like a high pitch sound going on, you see that the lights are flickering up. So this actually shows that I have selected the right range and the right frequency. So it actually puts these, very annoying frequencies in your ear when I have these sharp S sounds lowered in volume. My overall voice is still normal, but that actually makes it so everything sounds smoother, softer. Next up, we have the enhancer. Enhancer is very simple. It just enhances a little bit like an EQ curve. It gives you a small bass boost, which is what we have here. And I wish I had an EQ on right now on the screen, but basically my whole voice is now bassier. It's not deeper, but the deep part of the voice actually is now more prominent. If I put up the second part of the enhancer, as you can see right now, my S's get actually more pronounced again, because the high part of the frequency range, just like an EQ, is basically just an EQ of 2 knobs, gets upped again, so the volume is higher. Now, for my personal taste, these are a little bit too loud. I will fade them out a little bit later. But now we just get to the expander and gate. And as you can see, there's still, something here, like small voice samples that are still going in. So what we can do is actually have to gate out the input that we have, which means if there's volume coming in under a certain level, it will be filtered out and silenced. If it reaches a certain volume or loudness, it will be allowed through the chain. It's very simple. This helps, for example, also against clicks of mice and keyboards. You can hear me clicking on my keyboard. This is very annoying, especially if it gets compressed. So to not have that happen, we just put up the threshold and the ratio and filter it out. We already see, when I'm talking now, at the end of it, that the red light shows, okay, just with the threshold on, the activation is here. When I'm talking, it's green. When I'm not talking, it's red. That means when I've stopped talking, no sound comes through. And when I start talking, it actually continues on. Now, with the second knob here, with the ratio, we can actually say how much we want to basically silence the part that we want to silence, and how much the rest of the volume that's coming in should be allowed. I personally have set it through some testing on 2x1. As you can see here in the top, when I'm talking, the whole green bar is lighting up, and it's almost all the time at the same level. As you can see also now here in this recording, when I'm not talking, it is very silent here. Let me actually zoom in a little bit. Just as a comparison, just putting the ratio back again. So here's some fine details here. If you can hear it, there's the fan in the background. If I'm putting it to 2x1, it's all gone, and we're very good. And as I'm clicking, you're probably not really hearing it as much anymore. It should be silenced much more. I can increase that volume actually, but through some testing I found like this is roughly where I want to have the activation happening. While I'm clicking my keyboard and you can't hear it. Almost nothing. Alright, and then there's only one part left. If I want to, I can actually boost the whole output that I have at the end here. For some audio programs, that actually works well. For example, in Audacity, I can see how much is coming in. And if I boost it a little bit, we should be fine. I hope at least. Here's the problem. I can already see by the audio line that 18 is already the hard limit. So let me pull it down again. if I want to have my monitoring be better, I actually have to increase the volume on my mixer. And as you can see now, okay, the audio looks normal again. It's not a wall like it just was. So actually at the end of it, the output barely has to be touched. And the thing with the DAC is actually I could put that down even further. So as a test, I'm going to do that now. Right, so what I'm basically doing is I'm changing where, for example, the real impact happens. Because the DAC is now lowered much more. Like 9 o'clock. And the microprocessor is actually doing the loudness part now. It still has much more, punctuation to it. There's many more silence noises that are not being picked up by the DAC anymore because they already filtered out through the gain that was standalone put up here. So there's a difference in where you actually increase the final volume. Do you do that when you put it through the digital to audio converter? In that case, it's audio to digital. Or do you want to do that before that? And that whole explanation is basically why I decided I wanted to have basically a hardware solution for my effects. Because now my voice, hopefully, sounds very clear. The background noise is basically taken away. And the one last part that maybe comes through, I can just put in the RTX voice, accept it to maybe, I don't know, like 20%. And then we should be good to go. So, what the coolest part about that is, to me at least, when I'm talking and just speaking in here, I have to breathe. That's normal. But through the cool way how we set up the compressor and everything, and the gate especially, of course, if I'm not breathing too heavy, like, if I'm just breathing normal, you can barely hear it or not hear it at all. And that, I personally think, gives a lot of quality to the voice. So for just 140 euros that I paid for the DBX, I have a cool hardware solution where it can see each effect working and seeing how well they're working in real time. I don't need to tap out because it's already somewhere in the physical space that I can reach, where I can have small changes and dial them in with a thumb, again, without tapping out and without doing anything on my PC, because that was so far the biggest problem that I had. Potato, for example, Voicemeeter Potato crashing, and I had to restart it. Now, my whole setup can be made so much simpler again, less faulty in that sense, and I'm good to go. And that's basically why I did that. So, if you think a solution like GoXLR is so much better, or if you think, well, my Voicemeeter Potato has been working since day one forever, that's great. I really am happy for you that you found a cool solution that works for you. This is just what I did. So feel free to maybe take a look into it yourself. I personally use the Rode NTG2 here right now. This is the microphone. I'll put that in the description as well. And that's basically all to it. I'm glad that I have a way where I can have a fan running, where I can have the window open, where sometimes the car drives by if it's getting warmer. We're reaching the end of May. June's coming around, summertime. I definitely have to have a window open, but the audience doesn't need to know. And that basically makes it all more worth it. My name is Austin. Thank you so much for watching here for What Bit of Noise. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it. And I hope it was informative. If you stick through for the whole 30 minutes, I salute you. I hope you have a nice day. See you soon. Bye-bye.